Hi, I'm a possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is Star Crystal, a really boring and stupid sci-fi horror film from 1986. It was made by New World Pictures, the company founded by notorious schlock artist Roger Corman, but this was made after he had sold the company for a measly $16.5 million, so he had nothing to do with it, just like how my dad had nothing to do with me. You know, watching a low-budget movie called Star Crystal is like licking a girl's armpit. It sounds like fun at first, until you taste the deodorant. Oh, it's that alien prick from my reviews of The Amazing Bulk and Nuki, which everyone should watch with their ad blockers turned off.
That's right, and this time, vengeance shall be mine!
I thought you were dead.
Foolish Earthling! I used my advanced alien technology to travel back in time, to prevent my own death!
Oh, okay.
Now tremble in fear, for you are about to witness my wrath! Soon you shall learn a new definition of pain! Agony cannot even begin to Hey, get back here!
Alright, review time. The movie starts with a routine Mars expedition near the crater of Olympus Mons in the far-off year of 2032, when President Ben Shapiro made it illegal to be tall. I thought this was filmed in Nevada and they just put a red filter in front of the lens, but it turns out this movie was filmed entirely in space. These two guys in painter suits dig up a big crystal and put it in a bag, and then they fly away from the translucent planet in their toy spaceship. They take off their helmets and we get a good look at what are quite possibly the worst spacesuits ever seen in a movie. The helmets aren't even fastened to the suits in any way, they just kind of drape over their heads. And they're made of plastic. That ain't gonna protect your soft spot. And the backpacks are like laundry bags with vacuum cleaner hoses. You could buy a better spacesuit costume from Spirit Halloween. Anyway, they drink their space coke while scanning the crystal with their sci-fi thing, but they don't find anything remarkable about it. Just then, some lady comes in and tells them the captain's mad. They all leave and just leave the scanner thing running. We cut to an exterior shot of the spaceship for no reason, and then we see the crystal crack open, revealing a more crystal-y crystal inside, and also a writhing pink blob. Then a computer display tells us the engines have shut down due to some electrical problem, and a computer voice says oxygen is critically low, and then the camera pans past a bunch of dead people. By movie logic, we can surmise the crystal and blob had something to do with this. 2 months later, the spaceship is intercepted by a space station made of PVC pipes, and it passes through a big gate with a Millennium Falcon on either side, because they made everything in this movie out of spray-painted PVC and model parts. Yeah, don't bother trying to hide it. It's not like the Millennium Falcon is the most recognizable spaceship in all of pop culture or anything. Then another computer screen with painfully slowly revealed text says something about an emergency council meeting and everyone dying. Then some guys sit around a table in front of a black backdrop because they didn't have a set, and this scientist lady and colonel guy walk around the shopping mall that's supposed to be the inside of the space station. Then these two scumbags screw around with a control panel or something while spewing exposition we already know about as the blob thing listens to them. We cut back to the boardroom where a company guy and a NASA guy argue about who's to blame for everyone suffocating on the spaceship. Then the space station shakes and an alarm goes off. Some lady tells Colonel Guy there's a fire in the reactor core, a ton of screen time is eaten up by this guy flipping switches, and then a small handful of characters escape in the spaceship before the space station explodes. Then they all just kind of sit around staring at the view screen or whatever for a minute or so. And that's it for the space station. The entire rest of the movie is going to be on this crappy little spaceship set. You know, if the entire rest of the movie is just going to take place on this spaceship anyway, why even have this detour at the space station? Why not just make it a movie about the people who found the crystal, instead of killing them off just to bring on a whole new cast of characters to inhabit the same set 20 minutes into the movie? Why go through the effort of establishing all these characters and locations, only to throw them out immediately? Why waste all that time and money? Was it all just filler? Like pink slime? This guy named Roger tells some engineer lady named Billy to get to the bridge, and then they all sit around talking about how they're gonna have to ration all their food and water for the 2 years it's gonna take them to get back to Earth. And they all vote to put Roger in charge because he's the only one who knows how to fly a spaceship, except for this lady named Adrian who decides to stir up drama. Then Roger asks the computer how long it'll take to get to a place where they can refuel, and it's revealed the computer will only respond to Roger's voice. We can assume this will become important later. It also turns out the main propulsion system is still down, so they can't go anywhere. That kind of raises the question of how they escaped the space station before it exploded, but okay, I guess the propulsion system's down. Don't ask questions. Asking questions makes you alt-right. Billy yells at Roger for interrupting her while she's trying to fix the reactor. Then Adrian says they have enough food for 3 weeks, but part of the water supply has been contaminated, and she hasn't figured out what it was contaminated with yet. Then we see Billy crawling through a tube with her rolly kit. Yeah, remember those? She gets on the intercom and tells Roger the propulsion's working again, but then she gets attacked by the blob monster. So we're about 30 minutes into the movie now. If it seems like I'm glossing over it really fast, that's because not much has happened. A lot of the runtime so far has been taken up by lingering shots of nothing happening, people just kind of screwing around, people talking about unimportant things or repeating what we already know, awkward pauses in dialogue, and reaction shots that just hold for too long. As you can imagine, this all contributes to an experience that's somehow both boring and annoying at the same time. This lady named Sherry crawls through a tube and brings a cooler full of food to the bridge. This guy, Cal, shows her the heat-sensing monitor, then Roger tells her to go see why Billy isn't answering the intercom. When she leaves, Billy and Cal talk about how she was supposed to have time off because being in space for too long makes you go crazy, but now she's stuck on the spaceship. This little detail sounds like it's setting something up, doesn't it? She crawls through another tube and ends up in the engine room where she walks around on a floor which I think is supposed to look like a grate, but it's clearly just printed on. She spends 2 minutes walking around this tiny room as slowly as possible because of horror trope number 4938, until she finally stumbles upon Billy's dried up corpse and runs back to the tube where she frantically crawls to the laboratory to tell Adrian. Adrian tries to tell Roger and Cal about it, but it turns out they both got drunk in the 5 minutes since Sherry left, so they just laugh at her, so Adrian rips the intercom thing off the wall. Roger tries to talk to her through the emergency PA system, so Adrian crawls the tube back to the bridge, leaving Sherry alone. Okay, now this is stupid. So apparently, the only way to access any part of the spaceship is to crawl through a tube that you can't even stand up in. And the only reason I can think of for why the spaceship might be designed this way is because they didn't have it in their budget to build a corridor set, so they just put some fluorescent lights in a plastic drain pipe. Either that, or they wanted to be able to replicate the air duct scene from Alien later in the movie, but couldn't think of a way to justify it in the story, so they just said f*** it and made the actors crawl through tubes. Roger looks like he might have played baseball in high school, so I hope he doesn't have bad knees, because giving blowjobs in the locker room will do that. Adrian tries to get into the computer, but it won't let her.
Why won't this thing answer me?
It's only programmed for my voice.
Well, that's real smart. What if you got killed?
Never thought of that.
The computer explains there's an unknown life form on the ship which it assumes can survive without oxygen based on its weird alien biology, and is apparently what contaminated their water supply. Just then, they see something on the heat-sensing monitor, and realize it's not human because the dot's a different color. And it's coming right for them! They lock all the doors, then realize it's headed back to the lab, so they use the PA to tell Sherry to lock the door. But even though she was the first to see somebody killed by the monster and should be scared that there might be an intruder on the ship, she moves so slowly to lock the door that the blob monster gets to her before she does so. As Cal rushes to save her, Sherry splashes something on the blob monster, but all that does is piss it off. So Sherry's dead. Hey, remember when they said Sherry was supposed to get time off to keep her from going insane? Did you think that was setting something up? Of course it wasn't. What are you, stupid? He didn't think that through. And neither did I, $10 patrons. Stu Zunios, Anthony Diaz, Condor, Bold Bunny, Goma Flame, Nathaniel Davis, Cortez, G. Pizzy, Duke Snuggles, Vupar Supermud, Cameron Delshaw, Enrique Vidare, Scientist, Shifting Flesh, Tiberian Luke, Camilla Schwartz, Jim Duke, Toxic Masculinity, Salto, Aqualad, Salty Buckets, Peanut Warlock, The Random Night Lord, Thomas Brown, Rafflecoffer, Eduardo Sanchez, Josh Leipart, Zenith, Marco Magbuyer, Fractal Soraya, Will Durante, Jimmy Jam, Squid to Quebec, Will Carthesi, John Cleveland, Joe Berg, Noble Team 33, Diesel Weasel, Tony Belmonte, Twilight City Studios YouTube channel, Hey Ren and Penna, Alex Bones, Joseph Reagan, Limp, Ricky Baruga, Acetone, and Paco. Cal enters the lab with his pew-pew gun. Then he finds Sherry's body. He sees the blob monster and leaves, but it chases him through the tube. It catches him, so Roger turns off the air or whatever and tries to suffocate it, even though we just established that it doesn't need oxygen to live a few minutes ago. So of course that doesn't work. So we're like halfway through the movie now, and we're already down to 2 characters. What could possibly happen for the rest of the movie? Roger and Adrian just kind of hang out on the bridge and talk about nothing. Then the blob monster turns off their air supply, because the on-off switch for the air was just in the engine room for some reason. Roger hears an alarm and sits up in front of a picture of stars that's supposed to be a window, and realizes their oxygen is rapidly depleting. He tells the computer to disconnect all terminals outside the bridge, and oxygen levels somehow instantly return to normal. The blob monster stares at the crystal, then Adrian finds a video of the 2 painter suit guys on Mars earlier. The video is 25 hours long, so Adrian tells Roger to speed up the playback, and the movie tries to be funny by playing ragtime music over it. This is the only time the movie does anything like this, so it feels really out of place. Kind of like how you feel every time you go out in public. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I know you're socially awkward because you're watching this video. F you. Sometime later, they get a call from another nearby spaceship, but can't respond to them because something's jamming their outgoing signal.
Something's jamming our outgoing signal.
Since they can't hear them, the other spaceship tells them to make a right turn if everything's okay, so the blob monster somehow takes control of the spaceship and makes it make a right turn, causing the other spaceship to leave. Roger becomes enraged. The blob monster then telekinetically levitates a wrench, but doesn't do anything with it. That was just to establish that it has telekinetic powers, and that was the most creative way they could think of to do that. Adrian shows Roger a clipboard explaining how the previous crew found the blob monster and experimented on it, and that the crystal it came with is some kind of super advanced alien computer which it uses to figure out how to operate everything on the spaceship. My crystals don't help me operate anything, they just make me shake a lot. Suddenly, the other spaceship calls, warning them about a meteor storm headed toward them.
Meteor storm at 12 o'clock. Take immediate evasive action.
They're not meteors until they enter the Earth's atmosphere. Until then, they're asteroids. It's an asteroid storm. I expect a movie filmed entirely in space to get its facts right. Anyway, it turns out the spaceship is being protected by a force field being projected from the engine room. The blob monster and the crystal are protecting the ship, but now the power supply terminals to the engine room have been burned out, so I guess they're stuck. 2 days later, Roger kisses Adrian while she's unconscious because that's what a hero does, and then he finds a rolly kit full of medical supplies. That's kind of a bad design for a first aid kit. You have to roll it out on the floor to get anything out without spilling it. Anyway, he pulls out some kind of breathing device and starts unlocking the door, but then Adrian wakes up and tells him not to go, but he says he has to. No, the movie doesn't explain why. We find out later that he went to get food, but the movie decided not to tell us this until afterward. Roger crawls around the tubes for a while, wearing the breathing mask because the air is still turned off, I guess. And for whatever reason, the filmmakers decide to stretch the scene out, so we get a bunch of different angles of him crawling around, which make it apparent that they had maybe 20 feet of tubes to work with, and just filmed it from different angles to make it look like they had more. He finds Cal's body that keeps crawling, and I don't understand why it's taken so long for him to get to wherever he's going. The movie kept showing a map of the ship earlier, and it looks pretty straightforward, but now it's like he's crawling through a labyrinth of tubes. So after watching this idiot spend 80 seconds crawling around inside a plastic tube like a kid in a McDonald's play place, he finally emerges in the laboratory and finds another rolly kit with another oxygen mask, because when he saw Cal's body, the mask just fell off and he didn't think to just put it back on. And that was this movie's attempt at creating tension. He then grabs a box of food and starts crawling back, and the blob monster doesn't chase him for some reason. As he's making his way back, the air suddenly turns back on, so Roger takes the mask off because, you know, after nearly suffocating in the tubes, he doesn't think he might need it again. Then he gets back to the bridge, the door won't open so he bangs on it shouting to Adrian to open it, and she just barely manages to. Roger remarks that the blob monster didn't attack him, and even turned the air back on. They sit around unpacking the food for a while, and Roger explains that he's the great-great-grandson of Joseph Campbell, the founder of the Campbell Soup Company. This is not important. The character has the same last name as the actor who played him, so maybe throwing this line in was his idea, and I guess the director thought it was more interesting than I did. Then they just stare at a picture of stars for a while, and Roger says he thinks the blob monster has fixed their circuits because the computer told him they're 24 hours away from the refueling station. Then another alarm goes off and Roger realizes the blob monster is accessing files about the history of the human race. Within the context of the story, this is a short-range shuttlecraft designed for short missions, so I don't know why such files would be on the computer, other than because plot needs to happen. Anyway, we see the blob monster looking up human religion, and he actually starts reading the Bible, specifically the verses about loving your enemies and doing unto others. Now, your intuition might be that there's no way the movie's going where you think it's going, because that would be too stupid. But I remind you, this movie was made by the species that pays for bottled water. The computer tells Roger they're approaching the refueling station, but they have to slow down, and the speed brakes have to be activated within the next 45 minutes. So Roger grabs a blowtorch and makes his way through the tubes. After watching him crawl around for a whole minute, he emerges in the engine room, torch in hand, ready to fight the blob monster. Listen to this music. Adrian sees the blob monster on the heat sensing monitor and tries to warn Roger, but this dumbass drops the torch, and instead of immediately bending over to pick it up, he waits for a few seconds, then tries to pick it up. But then the blob monster telekinetically moves it away from him, and then seals the door. Roger tries to grab the crystal, but it freezes him. Then the blob monster shows up.
What do you want?
I need this ship.
And it talks now. Roger tries arguing with it, but it says humans are evil, and that's why he's been killing everyone.
Your life form usually kills anything that is unfamiliar. Like you, I'm afraid of dying.
Adrian comes in with a knife, but the monster telekinetically pins them to the walls. Then everyone just kinda hangs out for a while, not saying anything for a long stretch of time. Maybe they're contemplating why the goblin turned on the stove. But then the monster finally justifies himself.
Through your computer, I learned your lack of respect for life.
The monster says he killed everyone in self-defense because Sherry threw acid at him and Cal shot at him. But this doesn't explain why he tried to kill Billy. You know, the first one of them he killed? She didn't do anything. That attack was completely unprovoked. Nevertheless, the movie wants us to believe the monster has the moral high ground because humans are just so stupid and evil because they just kill anything they don't understand and have no respect for life. Yes, that's really what the movie's going for. They even have the music get all mystical like what he's saying is profound or something. So, did the monster have anything to do with the destruction of the space station? The movie never says he did, only that a fire broke out in the reactor, but considering he has the ability to manipulate things with his mind and take over spaceships, that seems too convenient to be a coincidence. So if the monster is responsible for blowing up the space station and killing all but the 5 people who escaped, 3 of whom he killed later, on top of the original crew of the spaceship, then this guy is responsible for potentially hundreds of deaths. But this movie is trying to play it off like, oh, this was all just a misunderstanding. See, the monster is really a good guy. He was just scared. But could you blame him? He was captured by mean old nasty humans. And humans are bad because, like, they fight wars and stuff, and eat meat, and vote Republican. Like, no, f*** off. The monster explains he's going to take the ship when they get to the refueling station, and they can leave with the other ship from earlier when they arrive later. And then we find out the monster's name is Gar, and now the computer is only responding to him and not Roger. What a twist! Gar gives Roger back control of the ship, and I guess they're all friends now. Then they arrive at the refueling station. Roger and Gar stock up the spaceship with food so Gar can eat on his journey to wherever he's going. Then Gar apologizes for killing everyone, and Roger is inexplicably forgiving.
I didn't understand.
We all just didn't understand him.
And the music takes on this happy tone as Roger and Adrian hang out with Gar because they're all just best friends now. And they even play space checkers or whatever. But then the computer tells them they need to leave now to get back to Earth for some reason. So Gar tells them to take the spaceship, saying he can use the crystal to make the refueling station mobile.
I will always remember you. Goodbye.
In space with a stranger.
So the refueling station made of Solo cups spray painted gray flies away, and Gar stares wistfully out the window as Roger and Adrian make their way back to Earth. Like, what the f*** is this movie doing? It goes from being this gory horror film to a bittersweet movie about an alien friend.
I value your friendship more than you know. I will always remember you.
You can rip off Alien, or you can rip off E.T. You can't do both. Like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, the movie's over. So that's Star Crystal. Oh hey, it took you this long to get back up the stairs?
Actually, I was reading the Bible I found in your basement.
I own a Bible?
That Jesus guy made a pretty good point. Maybe we should be friends.
Friends? After you tried to blow up the Earth, called me a rodent, shot me with a laser, and put me in a prison cell on a spaceship?
Yeah.
Thanks for watching my video, but now you gotta subscribe and hit the like button and leave a comment for the algorithm and support me on Patreon and send me fan art. The links are in the description. Bye.